Welcome to the Jet Set Hers podcast. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Jamie. We discuss travel, adventure, and everyday life. Listen with us and let's go somewhere.
Hi.
Yo, Jenny, what's up?
Welcome back to season 2.
Yes, here we are. We took a little hiatus over the summer due to just a lack of scheduling. Jenny was really busy. I was really busy, but we're back.
Yeah, it was kind of a last minute decision, but we were going through setting up interviews for the summer and realized she wasn't available for like 6 of the Mondays, and that's when we record, and I wasn't available for like the other 3, and so it just didn't make sense to either like half-ass an episode here and there or just not have one at all. So we decided to just take a little break, and it ended up being a very much needed break. We did my mom's celebration of life, which was really nice, and I'm sure we'll probably cover that trip at some point. And a few days later, my dad passed away, unfortunately. So it's been a rough summer, I guess you could say, and I'm sure we'll dive a little deeper into that throughout the season. And I feel like grief might play a role in some of our themes here and there just because I'm way too acquainted with it now, I guess you could say.
And it's different for everybody. So, it doesn't look the same for everybody going through stuff. So we're here for you, Jenny. And, I am here for you no matter what. So.
And moving on to lighter, happier stuff. We have a lot of great stuff planned for you this season. I know I'm going to try to dive a little bit more deeper into some of my bucket list destinations, try to get some guests on that can just tell stuff we haven't heard before. And I'm excited. We meet some amazing people doing these interviews, and I've definitely missed that this summer, not having them. So I'm ready to get back at it.
Yeah, part of the podcast is meeting new people that we love. We grow to love them, and we feel like they are such good friends afterwards. So that's definitely one of the coolest parts of doing the podcast here. So I'm also ready to get back out there, conduct more interviews and meeting new people.
Yeah, for example, like Kim. She was our Spain guest. Love her so much. She just posted about the festival that she talked about on the podcast. It's coming up, and she posted a picture of like one of the floats, and I was just like, oh my gosh, we talked all about that. And it was just cool to see it happening even with COVID, and it's just little things like that that make it all worth it.
Full circle.
So today, our first guest of season 2, her name is Morgana Ray. She just has a true passion for love and for travel, and she combines that, and I think you'll enjoy what she has to say.
Yeah, so Morgana and her husband actually are getting married 100 different times in 100 different places. So she's got a really cool story to share with you guys.
Yep, they've already checked quite a bit off their list, and we kind of talk about some that they have planned in the future. So here's Morgana. Enjoy. Excited to introduce this week's guest. This is Morgana Ray, and she is an internationally acclaimed business and life coach. And her goal is to have 100 weddings in 100 countries, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Hi, Morgana.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Do you want to just tell us about yourself?
Oh my gosh. Well, in the context of today's topic, I had been looking for the love of my life since I chased Brian Patterson under the piano on his 5th birthday, and he was the older man. And so I have a really, really long track record of romantic disaster, like unbroken record for a lot of decades. While I was looking for my person in all the wrong places, like personal development seminars, terrible place. No, not really, just not my person there. I was also traveling the world speaking, in Sydney and Bali and Sweden. And I actually took the speaking gig in Sweden. I had this fantasy of saying, why, yes, Hans, I'd love to see your longboat. But as soon as a cute guy paid attention to me, I like blushed bright red and ran away. So that didn't happen either. And so I'm going to all these beautiful places. My business is just growing. I've been in business for 27 years now. I love traveling, and I wanted to travel with the love of my life. I'm in all these beautiful places alone. And while I think it's really important to just have fun, have all your adventures, and really develop yourself and develop your life before you settle down, it went a lot longer than I expected. And when I was 45, this guy on one of the dating apps under the title Travel Guy wrote to me. We met, and he is now my husband. I was actually a year before that was in love with a guy who hated traveling because things always go wrong. But if you've ever traveled, things go wrong. They're supposed to go wrong. That's kind of part of the experience, and you get great stories. So a travel guy wrote to me, and I wrote back, and he had, terrible, terrible, terrible photos because he's a guy and he doesn't know any better. Luckily for me, because he turned out to be a lot cuter than his photos.
Nice.
Our first trip together was to Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, those 3 Caucasian countries. We got married for the first time in my life when I was already 47 years old, and I had just finished leading my Money Goddess retreat in Bali that I do every year. And he was in South Africa taking photos of wild animals and Skyping me at like 2 a.m. his time to talk to me for 5 minutes on a really bad Skype connection. And he proposed to me over Skype.
Aww.
Yeah. I mean, how 21st century is that? And I had whiplash, like emotional whiplash, because I just sort of figured out that we were going to get married. I just kind of knew it. Every guy that I had dated for 10 years had an expiration date above his head. And I know I'm talking a lot about relationship, and we'll get into travel really quick, but I made a decision when I guess I was 35 to stop pretending not to know for 2 years what I knew by the second date, and honestly knew by the first date. But such a romantic. Well, he has anger issues, but he's cute. I just wasn't going to do that anymore. And so every guy that I dated sort of had his like, okay, not Mr. Right, could be Mr. Right now for a few months. My husband was the first person I met who I just kept looking. I kept looking for the expiration date, and it never showed up. And after about maybe 8 or 9 months, I was like, oh, when he asked me to marry him, I'm going to say yes, he's the one, and never fretted about it, didn't worry about it. So when he asked me to marry him at about a year and a half in, I flew home, picked him up from the airport the next day, and we eloped with no witnesses, and just the minister, some celebrity minister who did some Bachelor TV shows from across the street married us. And it was like, bucket list complete. And then 2 weeks later, my husband is a travel writer who you might want to interview him too, had an assignment in Puerto Vallarta. So he called them up and said, hey, I just got married. Can I bring my wife? And they said, sure, make it a honeymoon. So I joined him, and it was the most amazing view of my life. I mean, they gave us the honeymoon suite in the Marriott Hotel in Puerto Vallarta. Highly, highly, highly recommended. And we had this room that was facing the entire bay. And we've had some amazing rooms, but I still to this day, I've never, ever experienced a view like that. Just the whole resort in front of you, and then the entire bay. And the bed is facing it, and it was amazing. And so we were going on the cruises, we were getting the massages, we were doing all of the touristy things that the tourist board wanted us to experience. Great. And then we were walking by after our massages, and we're all like greasy and sweaty and dirty and not dressed up. And they dropped us downtown, and we're walking by their iconic cathedral, Our Lady of Guadalupe. And my husband, and he describes it, he wasn't serious. It was just kind of a goof. Hey, let's get married again in the cathedral. And I said, sure. And a third woman who was on our tour, does a lot of tourism blogging for Twitter, said, well, I'm ordained in the US. And my husband, Devin, says, great, you'll marry us. So we just, our sweaty selves walked to the front of this cathedral, took off our rings, made up new vows on the spot. And it hit me so much more deeply because now we had witnesses. We had like all these people in the pews, these strangers, and Devin was saying things he didn't say the first time. I was saying things that I hadn't said the first time. I had 13 days as a married woman, so I knew so much more about being married. And tears are welling up in my eyes because the first time I was like, I have no idea what it means to be married, but I'm choosing you. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And this time felt deeper. It felt more real. And we kissed, strangers clapped, and we came out and we were so excited, feeling like, wow, let's do this everywhere. Let's get married in a yurt and in standing stones and huts and cathedrals and synagogues and mosques, and let's get married everywhere. And within a day, my husband came back to me with this marriage proposal, let's get married 100 times in 100 countries, which was an easy yes. And I thought it was all going to be guerrilla style weddings, which by the way is great, no problem. And I marched my way down to Ross Dress for Less and bought myself a white lacy dress because I was going to do it right. And because it's easy to pack. And it was a cute dress. And we planned this 10 country trip through the Baltics later that year. So because we couldn't decide where to go, so we decided to go everywhere. We started with Greece, ended up not going to Greece because my husband, the world traveler, gets seasickness like that. So we are putting that one off, but we will do Greece. Let's see, Croatia was number 2. Okay, we went to Croatia, Montenegro, Serbia, Slovenia, San Marino, Bosnia, Herzegovina, both the Muslim part and the Serbian side, so Republic of Srpska. So we had 2 weddings in Bosnia, Herzegovina. We also had 2 weddings in Serbia because the first one sucked. So we had to have a redo. People were booing at my husband. That was a double wedding with a Serbian celebrity pop star. And San Marino, which is that little itty bitty mountaintop republic in the middle of Italy. And then Vatican City, which is, another country in the middle of Italy. And then Rome, Italy itself. So that added up to an extra 10 countries. And here's, aside from Serbia, which is definitely the outlier, but no, not aside from Serbia, aside from that one wedding, because the second wedding was great with the woman this young woman at our front desk, who was a huge fan of the pop star that we had the double wedding with. Like she used to dress up to look like her, just like, kids would dress up to look like Madonna when I was in high school. And so when we came straggling in from the rain, because we ran away from that before my husband got into a fight and thrown into Serbian jail. The girl behind the desk, oh my God, such a lovely girl, took us into the cafeteria and gave us our wedding number 7, part 2. And she quoted Dean Martin from That's Amore.
Oh. And
the value of the Serbian wedding. And by the way, Serbia, what's the capital city? I'm going blank right now. It's because it's beautiful. I mean, they're all great countries, but we're here with this friend from my husband's childhood who had been involved with this huge pop star from Eastern Europe, Serbia specifically, for years. They invited us they asked if we could have a double wedding. And I was like, well, I'm having 100, I can share, sure. And things just got stranger. Like the first idea was we would just get married on a boat or in a park and be really easy peasy. And then it started getting more complicated where because they were just going to get married once, they wanted it to be fancier and to rent a place and get food and decorations, and things were just changing. And when my husband, so we have this double wedding and we go first, and my husband is saying his vows, and these strangers start to boo, which is really weird because I've never encountered that.
Right.
I've never heard of that happening. There was other stuff where, like, some celebrity who I didn't know took a look at me and asked if I was rich, because if I wasn't, he wasn't going to sleep with me. And I'm wearing a white dress and a veil. I'm obviously a bride. So it was just bizarre. And here's the great thing. Remember, I was talking about how, things go wrong and you get stories. Well, because of this bizarre wedding, which is nothing like any other wedding we've ever had, like the rest have been just like, people love and they're generous and they love participating. This one was different. But what I got from it is that at the end of the day, I wasn't going home with any of those people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the prize is the person you're with. The marriage, the partnership, the person you love, that's the prize. The wedding, no matter what it is like, it's an aperitif.
Right.
It's an hors d'oeuvre. And I think that people put so much pressure on that one day that they lose sight of that. I encourage people to get married frequently, because it's just like, you can't just say, I love you once and you're good, for the rest of your life. And
Right.
and you have that rosy honeymoon glow and then it's over. But for us, we just keep having it again and again and again, because what really matters, it's not the other people, it's not the dress, it's not the location, it's not the cake. Oh, I threw my bouquet at the Serbian wedding and it like bounced 3 times on the floor and then just sat there on the ground and nobody would pick it up.
Oh my gosh. Like, nah.
And I didn't even know these people. None of that matters. It is the vows. And if you don't get those the right the first time, then do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's just the choosing of the other person. And that's why we're getting married 100 times in 100 countries, because we love to travel. I married a guy whose online dating profile was, his handle was travel guy, and he's a travel writer. And just the choosing, taking time out of life to book a trip, pack a $20 white dress from Ross Dress for Less, get your veil from Amazon. I also got the most beautiful wreath as a gift from the woman at our hotel who married us in Montenegro. Because she loved the idea. She just said, I'm going to give you this, but you have to promise to get married in romantic places. And I was like, no problem.
Aww.
People love.
Yeah.
Right.
People are so unbelievably generous and kind. And doing this, not only does it keep us focused on why we choose each other and why we love each other, especially after we had a horrible fight in Mostar, but we still have to get married the next day. So we have to work it out, because where are we going to go? Right. We're in the middle of Bosnia Herzegovina and we don't know the language and we don't know anybody and we're there together. So
Right.
You better forgive me real quick.
we have to work it out. And then, but when you choose somebody, even knowing what it's like to hate their guts.
So you're choosing them anyway. Yeah.
Right. That's what love really is. And you get over it. So yeah, get married lots of times because it keeps it fresh. And also all these destination weddings that I've had, it's still cheaper than had I had one giant wedding at, a corporate hotel in Los Angeles, banquet room, or any wedding venue in Los Angeles. It wouldn't have been as special, but it would have been a lot more expensive.
It's insane how expensive We have a wedding venue at my work, and the prices I see sometimes, I'm like, I'd rather go on the honeymoon. So that's kind of what you're doing is you're incorporating the honeymoon with the wedding.
Yeah. And you can have a wedding party. They're kind of my husband's favorite wedding and my favorite wedding. So my husband's favorite wedding, and it's hard to say because the new weddings come. It's like, oh wow, that was a really good one. In San Marino, the tiny Republic of San Marino, the oldest republic in the world. We were, I think, in Croatia or Montenegro when we get an email from the tourism office of San Marino, the Republic of San Marino, offering to marry us in costume in a 1,000-year-old castle. My grandmother co-started the very first Renaissance pleasure fair in the world.
Wow.
In the 1960s, I was conceived at one of those fairs because I can count the months.
I love the Renaissance Festival. That's like, we used to go at least once or twice or 3 times a year, every year when I was growing up.
I love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my childhood.
That's so fun.
It didn't really dawn on me until I was about 17 years old that no, I had never actually been to England. I've just been pretending my whole life. So I remember when I was maybe 2 or 3 years old attending a wedding at the Renaissance Fair. Very, very like hippie flower child wedding in the hills of Agoura outside of Los Angeles, where the Renaissance Fair used to be. And that kind of seared a yearning in my romantic toddler heart that I want that. And so that's what San Marino represented to me is I get to have
You had your wedding.
Right. And so it was a full day affair where I was in medieval underwear, sitting in my tower with my ladies in waiting while my husband is negotiating my bride price with my pretend San Marino father, who is, I think they were all government employees. And my San Marino father in real life is a member of the Foreign Legion and was a bodyguard for the Pope. So now I see him on Facebook with all these like giant guns. Which
That's
is
actually awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's saying to my husband, you hurt her feelings and and we have it framed, this wedding document in medieval vulgar Latin. And we had this entire so when they work out the kinks, like how many cows and sheep or whatever I'm worth, they send up 4 knights and some more ladies in waiting with my clothing, my shoes, my jewelry, and they dress me up while they're singing authentic songs. And then they parade me down and we get married and they do these historically accurate dances. And then we eat pizza.
Love it.
Amazing.
And then they took us back up the tower to the courtyard and surprised us by knighting my husband, who is Caballero of the Republic of San Marino. By the way, if you were to have a wedding like that in San Marino, I think it would cost you $1,500.
What?
Right?
Yeah. That's like not even
so cheap.
Food here.
Yeah. In that neighborhood, $1,500, $2,000.
Whoa.
And then Slovenia was like Sleeping Beauty's castle, 1,000-year-old castle. They had just like celebrated the 1,000th year that year on a cliff overlooking this lake. And in the middle of the lake is this little island with a church and steps that is on the cover of all these travel books because it's so pretty and iconic and sparkling with all these alpine.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was my desktop background back in the day.
It's the prettiest thing. And I was just there and I never wanted to leave, but we had to move on and get married again. So, oh my God. So that was probably my favorite. And I'd never heard of Lake Bled, which is where this was in Slovenia. By the way, Slovenia, just beautiful country. Ljubljana, their capital, is so darling. And we locked our love. And I teased my husband that he stuck with me because not only would he have to divorce me 25 times, but he would have to jump into the river in Ljubljana, find the slimy key to unlock our love. And he's a bad swimmer.
Perfect.
Ha.
Yeah. Joke's on you.
Okay, so the mayor, this is really interesting because they have all these laws. So it has to be in Slovenian. The wedding ceremony has to be performed by the mayor. It has to be in Slovenian. They gave us an English interpreter, and the registrar of voters had to be there as a witness. So it may be a legal wedding there because all of those things were done. And the mayor is in this like grand poobah sort of medieval outfit with the red robes and the furry collar and the puffy cap, making off-color jokes about first night privileges.
Oh,
As we're looking over the lake and the sky, and I think all of this was like in November. So it was always raining until it was time to get married. And then that day the sun would come out just for the wedding.
Perfect.
And it was the prettiest thing I've ever seen. And I loved their wedding vows because they were very, very, I think, like modern and progressive. It was stuff like, you can't decide your partner's career. You're not going to, but you're going to be supportive of them in sickness and health, but you're going to support what they want to do. Your partner can't decide whether you have a baby or not. Just that's in their official state vows.
That's surprising, but nice. Yeah.
And I'm like getting more and more excited about that. And then Devin and I made up our vows. And I don't even remember what Devin said, but he was just so on that day. And it was like the best stuff I'd ever heard. And then they, pop, the top off the champagne bottle and they hit the recorder and play Imagine.
Oh.
And then this is the really traditional part, is then you go down from the castle and someone rows you in this little itty bitty rowboat to the little island church. And this is what Slovenians do, not just tourists like us, but this is very traditional Slovenian. The guy carries the woman, or, however your relationship is going to be. The stronger person carries the less strong person up 100 steps of fortitude to the top where the church is, from where the lake is to the church. And then you ring the bell of wishes. And then you eat very specific, delicious Slovenian wedding cake. It's only in Slovenia, and they only eat it at weddings and New Year's. And it's like crispy on the outside and soft, moist, and gooey on the inside. And it's amazing and delicious. And then you have, more Slovenian wine or champagne, which was also really yummy. And I think to do that would cost you $2,000, at least at the time that we did it.
What?
I need to get invited to a wedding or New Year's party because I need that cake.
And the castle has like a big bona fide, both of the castles, they have, bona fide wedding banquet halls. We were invited by Turkey to get married, and we got married in a friend's 700-year-old house in the middle of Turkey. I think the area is called Kayseri. They nicked costumes from a local museum, and I rode in on a horse, and my horse had a horse. Because the thing is again, people love love. And for us, we had this experience, especially in the beginning of the journey, starting in Croatia, where the tourism office and the woman who was hired to marry us were all calling it our fake wedding. So we can't get married in a cathedral because they're seriously Catholic, and it was a fake wedding. So they booked us they had it, the location scout for Game of Thrones picked our location, and I'm trying to remember the name of the park. If you go to inthenobride.com, we have all the details on the blog there. You have Westeros below you, You have Queen's Landing in your is your backdrop as you're in this beautiful park. That was our second wedding, and it felt so beautiful and so real. And they gave me a like a folk dress to wear, a traditional Croatian dress to wear. And by the end of it, they were crying and they were saying, "Oh, that was real." And because it is to us, it's not a joke. It's something that we do for ourselves. We share it with people because we think it's a good idea and it's fun. And I think that it's good for relationships with it's good for our marriage. If we stopped, our marriage would be fine. But I think it is nice to say you're a priority. And since we love traveling, let's get married again. But every ceremony is real to us because the relationship is real. So, we advocate travel and I think getting married over just choosing the person you love over and over again is a good thing to do. And especially going to places where, like, I remember in the 90s hearing horrible things about Bosnia-Herzegovina. So I was like, what a weird place to go when that's what you've heard.
Mm-hmm.
And you go there and the people are lovely. The wounds of the war are still there. And, the Serbians and the Bosnians don't interact all that much. Some do for business, which I think is a really good thing for them to have
Right. Stepping stone.
It was a terrible, terrible civil war. And so parts of the country are kind of called Srpska, which means they're Serbian, and they have their own sort of government within Bosnia-Herzegovina, and it tends to divide on religious grounds, which was very, very strange to me coming from the United States. The way countries and ethnicities and nationalities divided based on religion. Now I'm seeing, some disturbing fractures in the United States, but in having been to the Balkans and seen what happened there, the fractures here, like, more disturbing because Yugoslavia, which was the country that all these little countries used to be really peaceful and got along for a long time. So everything we can do to humanize people of other religions and other traditions and other cultures and see how much they love and they love their children and they just, want to have a good basic life like we do, I think the better, which is, why we should all travel and travel to places that are different than we know.
Well, and I was thinking, like, it's really good for you because you're getting this view of marriage from all these different cultures, like not just the American version of marriage, but you're getting advice and values from all these different cultures. So you really get to see like the best and the worst overall perspective.
Well, I haven't really, we've really had sort of, okay, Serbia was a little weird because, a bunch of people were drunk and who knows what was going on in their minds. But other than that, we've been married in Indonesia. We've been married, I'm trying to remember how many times in Mexico now, Puerto Vallarta, then we went to Laredo, and we've been married in Manzanillo and San Miguel de Allende. So I think 4 times. Manzanillo was wild because we were going to an event where they wanted Devin and I to speak on publishing and books and stuff like that. And to entice us to speak at this book event, the host said, "And we'll marry you." And I was like, great. We will just sneak off to a little corner in between stuff and hand her the script for what, the officiant says, and then we'll just make up our vows. And so I packed a white tunic and some yoga pants because I was getting married. That's how I planned for it. And then we got down there and the host of the event had hired an anthropologist who had organized this giant wedding with 40 costume dancers and herbs and ritual that just went on and like, calling in the different directions, calling in the different tribes, singing, dancing to the future and the past. It started with us with our backs to each other to symbolize how we had been looking for each other for years and hadn't seen each other. And it's just like layer out and people speaking on the different flavors of love, the spicy, the chocolate, the salty, the sour, and then we had a piñata and we had a dancing horse and we had the like Mexico's champion 10-year-old lassoist, abundant, spectacular wedding. And the punchline is that I don't like to organize things. Booking plane tickets is about as far as I go. So that's why I didn't want to do a wedding for myself. Not that I didn't want one. Having a big, stressful wedding that you plan and you choose the guests and the food and the venue and all that kind of stuff, it just honestly felt like a lot of pressure for a little baby marriage that's just getting on its feet. So that we're having all these weddings is kind of the cosmic joke, because I didn't expect it, but I'm very grateful for it.
I'm the same way on that too.
For a big wedding.
Right. If someone like puts it on for you, it's like, okay, but I have no desire to like do that. I like that what you're doing sounds way more enjoyable.
Well, there were actual studies that the success of a marriage kind of was inverse to how much was spent. So
we've been talking about that at my job. Like the more money spent, like the shorter the marriage will be or something.
Yeah. It's just because you're starting off in debt, or it was just too much pressure. It's not.
Well, and it becomes about the wedding, not about the marriage and the love. So I think that's where that just goes wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's an industry. You were talking about how expensive it is. And they multiply if you put the word wedding in front of it, photography, food.
Yeah.
All of it's going to be more expensive.
Mm-hmm. And it almost seems like a competition to me too. Like, you have, Miss Josie over here that has a big extravagant wedding, but her friend Sophia has to have a bigger, better wedding than she does. So I feel like sometimes you have folks that lose sight, like you said, because they're trying to outcompete or outdo each other for who's going to have the more fancier or more expensive wedding.
That's when the pressure gets put on so high to where any little mistake just makes the entire day crash down.
Yeah.
And it's not even enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not against beautiful, fancy weddings. I mean, they're gorgeous.
Right. But there are alternative options.
Yeah. I just didn't want that for me. Like I was 47 already. I wasn't a little princess anymore. And it wasn't going to be mom and dad doing it. It was going to be all on me. And honestly, for that kind of money, I'd rather put a down payment on a house, which I did the next year.
Yep, I'm the same way. If I have a wedding, it's probably going to be a destination wedding, small, and call it good, because I'm the same way. I would much rather have money to go towards other stuff. It's not going to be parents. It's, it's going to be, so I definitely understand.
And I think that's probably like the wanderlust in us too, is I would rather have that honeymoon.
Yeah.
And some people get the luxury of having both, a nice wedding and a nice honeymoon. But a lot of people, it's like you have to budget for one or the other. And I would much rather budget to travel.
And by the way, that's one of the reasons my husband and I are such a good fit, because that's our value too. Mm-hmm. We love to travel. This pandemic has really sucked.
Yes. That's why we're here doing these interviews.
But I bought tickets for January because I'm turning 55 in January. And
happy birthday.
Thank you. So, and we're vaccinated and we're masking, and hopefully it'll be doable.
Where?
We're flying into Chile, and we're going to Chile, Uruguay, and Buenos Aires.
And you have
Nice.
weddings set up, I'm assuming?
We don't have anything set up yet,
I guess right now it's
There's
so
time.
but we will,
right.
even if it's like, hey, we're doing this thing,
Right.
Uruguay has this, because I have a friend who used to live in Uruguay. So he's in, I think it's called Burkina Faso, or it's this little country in Western Africa that has the distinction of being the second poorest country on the planet. And I had never heard of it before I found out he had just moved there. So we had a Zoom, Devin and my husband and I, and my friend Ben, who's now there. And I really have got to learn the name of that country. But he had lived in with his wife in Uruguay for a number of years. And so I was looking at pictures, so it was on my radar, and they've got this beach where there are these things like coming out of the sand, like so you could be standing in the palm of some giant's hand. So that's where I think I want us to get married, in Uruguay.
That would be amazing. I love that.
Chile has one of I think there are 7 Baha'i temples in the world, is in Santiago. So that seems like an obvious place to get married, in front of the temple. And we've been told southern Chile is a place that we should definitely check out. And then I had this dream when I was turning 50 of dancing tango in Argentina. So we're going to go to Buenos Aires and dance tango terribly. And
Heck yeah.
yeah.
Heck
And make
yeah.
everybody feel better about their tango.
Right. Make your dreams come to life.
We've taken classes, so we're just good enough to be really bad.
Right. Just good enough to embarrass yourself out there in front of everybody.
Well, by the way, that's what is so great about midlife, is it's so hard to embarrass us now.
Right. Like, oh, we're good with this.
And
We're
if you're
good. We're
having
happy.
fun and showing it, I feel like people are just gonna be like, they're having fun, and that's it. I mean, you might have a few, but
Yeah, if we're respectful. Like, the bottom line is, dress appropriately for any temple you go to anywhere. And learn how to say thank you in the language of any country you go to is
agreed.
number one. Thank you is the number one priority. And everything else just sort of falls into place.
You want to get to 100, and we're at 25 now.
Yeah.
Do you have a few on your list? Or like, say one. Do you have one on your list that's just like you just cannot wait for that one specific location?
Yeah. When my husband proposed, he was in South Africa. And I think it was, and he was having, kind of a spiritual crisis there. He almost got eaten by a lion. That's when he decided that he liked me, because it's like, why am I risking my life to talk to this girl? Oh,
Oh.
And at one point he got really sick and delusional and was like, he loves to travel, but he's a terrible traveler and he gets sick almost time we go anywhere. And that's just kind of part of his process. But while he was there, he made friends, and we were invited to have a Zulu wedding. That's my dream. That is my dream, to go to South Africa, to see Zulu dancers, to learn how they have a wedding, and to just that's the top of my list when we can get there safely, because there are a lot of countries that are closed, and I really respect that, because I want to keep them safe.
Yes,
From
definitely.
Right.
So when it's time, that's where I want us to go.
I love it.
Oh, that's sweet.
Do you have like a favorite destination, like not for weddings, just like to travel to?
Yeah, there are 2 places that I get crushes. I get fixated on places. So I'm not good at narrowing down any single favorites. There are places that I get addicted to. So I've been leading my retreats in Bali, I think 9 times. I guess I've been to Bali 10 times. I've also been going to San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, over and over and over again. So I'm going to actually do this year's retreat there because Bali is closed.
Right.
Our last batch of weddings in 2019, I really fell head over heels in love with Spain and Portugal. Like, I have to go back. It's not, it's not a surprise that people who go to any of these places keep going back over and over again, or live there. Because, sometimes I also think of a backup country, or where do I want to retire? I certainly am surprised that I'm this far into life and I haven't lived for any extended time in another country. And that's something that I, want to do. So keeping an eye out for that. So those are places. And I haven't been back to Lake Blood. That place just, I felt it in my heart in such a deep way. Where while I was there, I just felt like I never wanted to leave. I just wanted to walk around the lake and talk to God. Didn't want to like tweet or shop or anything or care about like what anybody thought. I just wanted to be there. It was such a
Connection.
yeah.
Wow.
And I can definitely see you living in another country, especially living somewhere where you can easily get to everywhere else, and then you can just start knocking off these weddings once COVID has officially been lifted. Hopefully, is not too far in the near future. Is there anything else you wanted to cover with us today, or just even talk about how people can find you?
Oh yeah. Thank you for asking. So we have our website, In the Know Bride, where you can actually see a great little 3-minute video of our first 11 weddings.
We watched it.
We watched that.
And my husband and I have a radio show every Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time at BBS Radio, bbsradio.com, called Crazy Sexy Midlife Love. Based on my discovery that midlife love is better because we're smarter, men are more relationship ready, and those who are not are obvious. Who knew? Like, who knew how much more fun love gets with really good partners, less drama, so that you can travel and then have your drama that way. So yeah, Crazy Sexy Midlife Love every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific time at BBS Radio, and all the archives are posted at bbsradio.com/Crazy Sexy Midlife Love.
And we'll
So
definitely tag all this when we post.
I had my first wedding at 47.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm 31. I'm like as single as possible. So
Yeah, which is a really good time to be single.
Yeah.
Because, the idea when you get married is that's it.
Yeah.
right.
No singlehood. So, have just milk singlehood for all it's worth, so that when you're done and you have no regrets.
Thank you for coming on today. I feel like we would probably talk about travel for several more hours. So we'll definitely have to hear about these future weddings as they continue to be planned and happen.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again so much to Morgana for coming on. We had so much fun talking with you. And even if 100 weddings isn't your thing, I think anyone that's interested in a low-key destination wedding could take something away from this episode, because a lot of the stuff she spoke about really is something I think I would want to do. Even maybe not 100 of them, but even just one nice destination wedding.
Oh yeah, definitely. She gives some good information about anybody, for anybody that's looking to take a destination wedding.
And remember to keep an eye out on our socials: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Jet Set Hers Pod.
Head to our website, which I know I keep saying I'm going to work on, but I really am going to work on that soon.
jetsethers.com.
And send us an email if you want to be a guest on the show, if you have any crazy stories you want to tell, if you just want to say, hey, what's up, send us an email.
jetsethers@gmail.com.
And because you clearly love us, you're back for season 2. Go on, give us a rate, give us a review.
And you know what to do. See you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.